It is the one and only Daniel Sparks, Senator Sparks. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Paul. Good to be with you.
Well, thank you for giving us the chance to put that update in there. But a lot of people are concerned about what's going on as far as the capital city, and we wanted to squeeze that in. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I can't complain at all. I am proud to see that the rain let up on you a little bit, to give you a little bit of break. That was good to hear.
We got all your water from up north. You know that, don't you?
I tell you, we're one of the things where I live. It is the beginning of hill country, and we don't have the flooding problems a lot of people have. It's a little bit better on that side.
A lot of things going on, and I know we talked about this earlier. That just because as a lawyer, you watch just to touch on this real briefly. Your thoughts, just political thoughts on what's going on as far as Mar-a-Lago is concerned, and also the student loans. But you can't separate yourself as a citizen and also as a lawmaker.
Well, and I think one of the big takeaways is people are angry. People just everywhere you look, people are upset, and you see what happened at Mar-a-Lago, and of course, being an attorney, you want to know what your basis is and your foundation is for your affidavit, for your search warrants, things like that. Those are constitutional protections. Those are rules under our laws. And when they play games and you come out with something that's super redacted, all it does is add fuel to the fire. And from time to time, you think it's, there's certain people that just want to stoke the fire. It doesn't matter which side they're on. They want to keep the anger boiling. And I will say, as it relates to the student loan issue, that has dominated my social media page, and on both sides. And you've got people, and they can be upset, I guess, if they want to for this comment, but when they're conflating that with salvation through Jesus Christ, and they're saying forgiveness of debt, and you Christian folks should not be against that. First of all, that's just that's a bad move in my opinion. But
I think it's a sin.
I mean, it's pretty bad. But the big thing, and I want people to understand, I'm one who sits here today with student loans. I went back to school a little later in life, and I chose to do that. I considered that an investment. I signed on the dotted line. And I made an agreement. I gave my word, and absent something outside of my control, I'm going to try to keep my word. And, that's the problem. And, of course, and I'll tell you something else. That you played a clip right before you took the break. The former Obama advisor said, this is not a good plan because it helps rich folks. You notice wealthy people, I believe he said. So he just defined wealthy as someone who makes less than $125,000 a year, no matter where they live, because the cap and the cutoff on the student loan forgiveness is $125,000. If you don't think when it's tax increase time and things of that nature that they're talking about you, if you think you're middle class and you're going to avoid that, you're so wrong. That's the problem with the inflation. It's attacking the middle class the worst. That's the most impact it makes on. The same thing will happen, in other economic avenues. But I think he tipped his hand a little bit there by making $125,000 or less, in his mind, wealthy.
I agree with you. And the other part of this, too, is if you wanted to do this with any reason at all, do it to a point if somebody has those loans, they've got 4 years of college, whatever it is, it hasn't been a good investment for one reason or the other. Reasons could go anywhere from you just had some bad luck, you've had some health issues, to you're just lazy. You're living with your mother and father in the basement. You've got a 4-year degree. You can't find a job that's paying you a reasonable salary. If that's the case, and you do have someone down on their luck, they can't find a job in this job market, attach it to something like Peace Corps service. Have some value in there that you got to do this to earn that one way or the other. And I think if that happened, then some people would look at it and say, if you want to go to work for the Peace Corps or do this volunteer work or something, maybe we could work something out. But
I think that's true. And you look at it, you mentioned somebody that had a health problem. We're not talking about forgiving medical debt. That was not a choice a lot of times to have a health problem. It kind of reminds you of Cousin Eddie off the Vacation movies. A lot of people are holding out for that upper-level management position. They're not working, but they're choosing not to go into a field because they think somebody else is going to forgive it. And if you look at this now, the concern is now government has tipped their hand to say, I may forgive your loan if you go to college. People borrow that money. At the end of the day, you signed up, you made that agreement. You said you would do these things. Now, you notice the White House came popping off at people who got PPP loans and trying to, again, equate that. Remember, the PPP loan, the agreement there was if you spent it on salaries, if you spend it on the proper things, it would be forgiven. The student loan was not promised to be forgiven on the front end, so you can't compare those two. And, of course, the PPP loans had to come out after the federal government shoved this $600 unemployment kicker and couldn't figure out why people wouldn't go to work. So they have created every bit of this, and you look at the rental assistance program, you look at broadband assistance programs, you look at almost everything that you need or want, the government says, we will take care of it for you. And unfortunately, that is the government wanting to be the person you rely on the most, and that's bad government.
It's even worse than that. And again, Senator Daniel Sparks is with us. It's even worse than that, because if we came to you and I said, I got to borrow $122, got to borrow it. It's critical. We got to have it now. You've got to give it to me. And then a year later, of that $122, I only spent $15. Now I equate that. But here's the analogy. Did you realize of the $122 billion that the Democrats passed for this PPP money, this COVID for education? Because they said the education is going to have this. Of the $122 billion, only $15.4 billion of that money's been spent. The rest of it hadn't been spent. Out of $122 billion we gave for that fund, it would be, if it's $1.22, only 15 cents has been spent. So it's the waste in this administration is mind-boggling.
And a lot of times they're repurposing that money, re-giving that money away, and they get credit twice for giving money away.
Well, not only that, it goes to their campaign chest to give some grease some elbows here and there, grease some palms here and there. Talk about the state House and Senate and what's coming up. Are you involved in any summer meetings?
We've had some things going on. There is actually insurance. I don't serve on insurance, but I'm going to attend. It's very interesting to me, dealing with the PBM side, the pharmacy benefit management groups. You've mentioned pharmacy issues. There's a great concern on the drug side that independent pharmacies are just getting squeezed on every side. And one of the things that a lot of times people don't realize is that these PBMs set the formulary, they set the drugs, and there's a 340B program that helps people in rural, lesser income situations with their drug plans, and a lot of pharmacies have survived, and patients have been able to have access due to that. Yeah. And the PBMs are trying to carve that out. Everything in their effort to take away independent business so that they can have it. And, of course, when you get one player or two players in the game, you have no control over price, and it's a bad competitive environment. So we've recognized that. We've passed some legislation, but that's something that's very important. I talked to one of our major hospital systems, or was on a conference call with them a week or so ago, and it's very impactful to them. So that's one of the big things this week, at least. Monday and Tuesday, the insurance folks have got that going on.
I think the whole health issue is going to be something that the state legislature comes out by the time sine die to make some drastic changes one way or the other. By the way, if you're counting on that rocket going up, it is not. NASA has scrubbed the launch of the new moon rocket. It had no crew on it, of course, but they had a fuel leak, so it's back to the drawing board for that. When you look at the other issues out there, what do you think some of the other issues are going to be as far as the state? Because we handled so many last year.
Sure.
Actually, this year.
And I think some of them will be repeats. We're going to have to look at the ARPA monies that have been allocated. Mm-hmm. Are those funds moving? Because they are time sensitive. And if they're not, we need to repurpose those funds. We need to make sure that we make their greatest impact here in the state. I think you're going to see additional things, talking about taxes, what relief that we can give to Mississippians, across the board that are just, under these pressures. We're also going to see what levels of pushback that we have as a state for multiple areas of federal overreach or things that we're uncomfortable with. People are recognizing and certainly embracing that the states have so many rights that we just almost walked away from over the years to allow the federal government to control, and we're trying to push back. We've got a Supreme Court that seems to be somewhat more friendly to that, and of course the thing that we have to realize in Mississippi is as we push back, we are a state that receives more federal money than we send in. That's why the fear is so great that you are so reliant upon federal money, is that you also then have to become compelled to do what they want you to do so often. You had a great interview earlier this week with Drew Schneider at Medicaid. I was taken aback back, I did not realize, I guess, that there was no disenrollment, and his rolls are up 20%. Well, if you look at that, Medicaid's about $1 billion item for the Mississippi State part. Yeah. So is that going to be up $200 million? So is there going to be deficit appropriations due to this inflation and these federal rules or guidelines?
Well, the number that he threw at us, and I think it was that $200 million, if we expanded the rolls, what would our 10% cost us? And that would be pulling another $200 million from the revenue.
Sure, but we've been forced to expand the rolls by not disenrolling. He said they're up 20% since March of 2020.
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is without any
sure.
talk of Medicaid expansion.
Right.
More with Senator Daniel Sparks. I want to ask you about also your Vice Chairman of Senate Corrections. I believe that meeting is coming up soon with the feds, is it not, or do you know? With the corrections?
Sure, there will probably be multiples, but yes.
Yeah. Back with more coming up next. Sparks to wrap it up here, and we were talking about this. Last week we had the speaker on, and he followed up the interview saying that we were about $34 million above projections as far as the early report in August, which is good news. So it seems like our revenue is continuing to be quite healthy out there. So that's good news as far as the on the money side of it. I do want to ask you about the corrections. In your committee, what do you think needs to happen in this coming session?
Well, I think we need to evaluate what has been done since Commissioner Kane came in, because, he came in a very difficult circumstance in 2020 and hit the ground running. And there's a lot of good things that have happened. But we, and I've said this to he and his folks as well, and they've been very responsive every time I've ever made an inquiry or asked a question. But we need to see some data. We need to see some metrics. We need to know where these programs are. And I had a conversation with them about a week ago about this. The Walnut Grove facility has been reopened and repurposed, and they're doing a lot of good work there with alcohol and drug, particularly as they're getting ready to release people. They want to make sure that when we release somebody, we're trying to be in a position where the recidivism numbers can be reined in. If you've got a job skill and you've got proper documentation to go to work, and you don't come out of the doors with an addiction, you've got a much better opportunity. And, of course, in today's environment, there is ability and willingness to hire people who've had felony backgrounds. So that's one of our biggest focuses. Of course, right now our numbers are up. Now, part of that may be because we're prosecuting crime, and that's fine from that standpoint. But we also, in the Department of Corrections, does not have any control over the parole board. The parole board is autonomous in the decision-making process as far as who gets parole. And there's some concern, and I think we're going to look at the numbers, particularly with nonviolent offenders who have been denied parole and set off for an extended period of time. We're going to look at that data. So it's public.
Who has domain over the parole board? Well, that would be the governor, or
the parole board themselves. Of course, the governor appoints them, and the Senate confirms them. But it is
they're standalone. They have nothing to do with the Department of Corrections.
Not as far as a parole decision. Now they may fall under the Department of Corrections for some other administrative issues, but we do need to look and see why are the numbers up. It may be a valid reason, but we just need to keep an eye on that, because there are Department of Justice inquiries. Of course, a lot of times questions are not answered maybe as clearly as they normally would when litigation is involved. But we want to look and see, are we doing a better job? I think we are doing a better job. But we've got a lot of work to do. We still have much to cover.
And I'll have to come. That goes back on the state legislature, because the state legislature is one who appropriates the money for the Department of Corrections, number one. Number two, I would think a vast number of the ills that are going to be uncovered and have been uncovered as far as the Department of Justice are only applicable to a lack of funding. In other words, you're not going to cure those without dollars. So no matter what a guy does or whoever is in that position, you got to have some money from the state legislature to fix those things.
I think so, and of course they've gotten a significant increase. Pretty much everything that they've asked for the last couple of years, I think the legislature has done. We've put some of the ARPA funding toward the projects as far as buildings and grounds, but we have given the amount of money that was requested for raises to try to hire people. But, we face the same struggles in this hiring environment that private business faces. It's just hard to find labor. Yeah. But those are the big things. And they're trying to use as much technology as possible to help fill those gaps from a camera standpoint, from, other things that they can do. But they're working hard, but it's always a battle. And our states around us face the same difficulties. Corrections, every time I talk with people from other states, they have the exact same problems we have, exact same concerns.
First bill that Daniel Sparks will drop in the legislature is what?
I'll be honest. I kind of came into a situation last year with the auto dealers, and I want to talk with my chairman and make sure to see if he's in a position where he can support that legislation. But when the Tesla facility came in, I still believe that's a circumvention of the law. I believe that they've gone around the statute of our dealership laws, and I just want a fair playing field there. We went through this with the
But
realtors.
They've opened a dealership since that time.
They have. Well,
does
that's
that negate that?
No, even the language.
That concern?
Even the language last year, they were. And they didn't open a dealership. They'll call it a showroom because they don't want to operate under the dealership model that the rest of the manufacturers in this, in this country and dealerships in this state have to operate under. So I want to make sure, and I think we're always looking at that. What is fair across the board in the business community? So we will be looking at that. Also, we'll be looking to sign my name onto some PBM legislation, just like we talked about earlier, because we've got to address that, or we're going to choke our independent pharmacies out of business.
You got it. Senator Daniel Sparks, Mississippi District 5, Etowah, Prentiss, and Tishomingo counties. Always a pleasure, sir. Thank you, and you're always full of good information. Look forward to having you back.